Okay, great.
I mean, all the hosts. I think that if you're not a host, I don't know if they give you the power to record, but
It's a safe measure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, welcome.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I was just gonna say welcome, everyone. Before we get started, just want to remind everyone that this session is being recorded. So yeah, thank you for joining us at the San Diego School Counselor Con Session 4. My name is Madison Decker. I am a school counseling intern at Fallbrook STEM Academy, and I will be the room moderator for today. I'm representing SDSU. So yeah. So before we get started, we ask that attendees keep themselves muted unless asked otherwise during the presentation, but feel free to use the chat and ask questions during the session if you have any. And hopefully we still have good energy for our final session. I think this is our final session, right? Yeah, okay. And now I would like to introduce Joel Clark and Emily Stevenson with our deeper dive into CTE presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Madison. And we're so excited to be here because CTE is definitely a huge part of my work, and something I have real passion for is helping our students become future ready. And CTE is one of the greatest ways to do that and give students opportunities to build skills. So, but for a lot of people, it's a mystery, right? What's happening in that random shop out in the parking lot? And so for those of you who are here, we're going to dive into a lot of the kind of ins and outs of CTE, hopefully demystify some of that. And so my role, I'm the integrated curriculum coordinator for the San Diego County Office of Education. And I work with CTE here in our region. I'm also on the state team for distance learning and CTE. And so I am excited to be here, and I have with me Emily. So Emily, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Emily Stevenson, and I am currently in my third year working as the lead CTE counselor for Poway Unified. And I come from actually a college admissions background for over 14 years before switching over to the high school side and working as a co-director of college counseling for an independent school, and then now for Poway. So CTE was very new to me when I came to Poway 3 years ago. So definitely I get how confusing it can be, and kind of, it's one of those, I always refer to our office as the island of misfit toys. No one really knows where we fit in because we're both a department and a program. And, I think we sometimes get lost in those electives or whatever it may be, when really CTE are academic courses that complement the core academics at a school site. So I feel like I'm finally getting the hang of it and understanding it, and it's been a lot of fun seeing all the great things we do in our district and across the county.
Perfect. And you should be able to find in the chat the link to the slides. And as I see more people come in, I'll be just reposting it since we know that Zoom chats don't keep up with attendees until they get in. So feel free to follow along, ask questions in the chat. We don't have a huge group here today, so we can also do some like Q&A at the end with any questions that are driving your curiosity. So I wanted to start out by just addressing that right now we are building a new generation of career pathways. The development of these pathways are driven by labor market information. And so that comes from a few different sources. I think that this link goes to the San Diego Workforce Partnership, but we use our Workforce Investment Board, the San Diego Workforce Partnership. We use our community college colleagues where they have the Center of Excellence. Some of our EDCs, I'll show you some data from the San Diego EDC here in a moment, because we are here, it's partly workforce development. And I also want us to think about, if we asked our students what they were going to get out of education, they hopefully are like, a job, right? And so how do we listen to our students and be really thoughtful about helping them see what are the opportunities in the future? And the only way we can do that is to embed ourselves in a little bit of labor market information. And side note, in March, we're doing a webinar on labor market information. I don't have the information on here, but I can track that down by the end of this presentation. So if you want to know more, that's coming down the pipeline. Also, when we think about pathways, we don't just think about a couple of years of high school, right? We really want to be guiding students into our 2 and 4 years institutions and be thoughtful about from where they are now, how do they get to the field that they're most interested in? And also, how do they explore so they know the answer to that? Part of it is stepping away and not just saying like, what do you want to be when you grow up? But like, what problems do you want to solve? What careers are in that field? How do we get you from where you are to that field? And that's going to be some high school coursework, some post-secondary coursework, maybe certifications, this whole bundle. And that's what we call our career pathway. If I was to ask you, and I've done this a ton of times, like if I was in a room with you all, I might say like, I would like you to spend 10 minutes drawing your career pathway. And for how many of you is it, I went to high school, then I went to college, and then I got a career, right? And so that's one of those pieces that students don't really know how wiggly a career pathway can be. And so helping them to see the path to where they want to be is important. Many of our career pathway classes are A through G approved, not just as an elective, but also as things like fine arts or even there's many classes that are in the sciences as well. And so really being thoughtful about how we are making sure that the students get the credit that they deserve for doing these classes that are highly rigorous is important. And many of them also offer college credit through articulation, which is an agreement that says this high school class matches this college class. So if they finish it, we're going to give them credit for having done that college class. And what that does is it kind of gives them like their first step into college. And so that's one of the reasons why CTE students are very likely to go on and continue their education because they have a foot into college. And finally, it's not a silo. And we're going to look at a bunch of different models today because these pathways are being integrated. So we see models, like I taught medical chemistry when I was in the high school. So I wrote the curriculum that's used all over the place for medical chemistry. And it's a great way to pull your science classes in beside your CTE pathway in health science medical technology, right? So my colleague at our school taught things like medical front office and medical terminology and healthcare essentials. And then when the students took their required sciences, they got med bio, med chem, anatomy, physiology. And so that when they graduated, they were much more prepared for post-secondary opportunities in those fields, whether they were going to 2-year or 4-year or forever year because they want to be a physician, right? So it's really, how do we give students an overarching feel here? And Emily, I wonder if you have any other concepts around how career pathways are shifting and how that might tie into, this counseling, who I think a lot of counselors got into counseling to help students find a career. I think we were just talking about how that's like a fight, but I wonder if that's anything you want to speak to.
For a while we were so 4-year focused, 4-year college, 4-year college, 4-year college, and
4-year or failure, right? Or failure, right. Sometimes it's like, oh, if you don't get into that 4-year, nope, you're out.
Well, I've even heard counselors before say like, oh, I know students at our school, if they have below a 3.6, their college options are limited, and that's so not true. And I think really now we're shifting to where we're looking to career first. So what is it that the student is interested in doing? What are their skills? What are their interests? What are their values? And once we can kind of identify a career area, it doesn't mean that they have to say, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, but maybe it's a student that really tends to like things in healthcare, and then work backwards. So how do I get to that career? What do I need to do? Is it a 4-year path? Is it a 2-year path? Is it a 2 to 4 year? Or is it straight to industry? And so I think we're kind of starting to do that so that, what the student decides to do when they graduate from high school is more intentional rather than just go to a 4-year school, which again is great. And I think, if you look at salaries, a lot of times too, that 4-year education is valuable, but it's not always an option or the best option for certain careers.
It's valuable depending on your major. Right? Yes. I think a lot of times they say students who graduate from CTE at a 2-year college will make more than their peers who graduate at a 4-year right off the bat. A lot of the 4-year students have more opportunities to promote because of that degree. And so that might be where we get some of those shifts. But we've all seen kids, friends, everybody around us. There's so many people who are like, gosh, if I had known that getting a degree in psychology in my undergraduate did not lead to jobs, because the only way you get a job is you keep going, right? Or whatever it is. So we have a lot of people who are underemployed with a 4-year degree because they don't have the skills to match the industry needs, right? So this is where we're informing students, not just like, here's a 2-year option, but all right, you do this pathway, here's what you might do in a 2-year college. Here are the great opportunities at a 4-year college. And both of those are aligned to industry needs and labor market information, so that we're really sending students out with the kind of like ability to make an informed decision about their future.
Right. And I mean, and Elise points out too, is it's, before it was CTE or college, right? Or 4-year. And really now those things are connected. And it's really, I mean, man, if you can get the hands-on experience and just decide like, oh, I really like doing this, and then have those conversations with your counselor. Well, what is it about this that you like doing? And then being able to tie that to something. I mean, you get much more out of your learning, right? Because you're now applying that knowledge, and B, just a greater sense and a greater confidence in what it is you want to do as well.
Yeah, and in the chat, Elsie is mentioning some of the paradigm shifts, which is exactly what you're saying right now, of this either university or CTE, and really being thoughtful also about, we don't want to have like certain demographics, whether we're doing it like, of course, hopefully no one's doing it intentionally, but we all have implicit bias, and we all, want certain things. So if we are pointing certain students in certain directions, that can be really a negative piece. So when we talk about CTE, it's really important to make sure that we're not saying it's a separate track. All students are career bound. All. I mean, unless you're going to be a stay-at-home parent or some kind of rich person who doesn't have to have a job, right? Like, how do we make sure that all of our students have career-ready opportunities, whether they're going to an apprenticeship, a 2-year, a 4-year, or forever college, right? So what we're going to do today is we're going to jump into just some like demystifying parts of what CTE is, but we also just wanted to start out with this conversation around, trying to address some of the myths and some of the barriers to engagement in CTE. All right, so we're going to jump into this gaining a better understanding, and we're actually going to start with a video from there's a national organization that created this. And so this is great, not only for informing you all, but also when you're working with other stakeholders like your parent community, your administrators, and things like this. This is a great tool in your pocket. So here you go.
Everyone wants kids to be ready to take on the real world, right? So what's the secret? Say hello to CTE. CTE is Career Technical Education. Maybe you've never heard of it, but CTE gives learners an academic foundation along with technical skills and hands-on experience in a whole bunch of different areas to help them get ready for the real world. Think of CTE as a high school experience, but with even more value because it fills a big gap for a lot of students. In fact, CTE learners and their parents are 3 times as likely to say they're very satisfied with the ability to learn real-world skills as part of their education as compared to non-CTE learners and their parents. And since over 75% of CTE learners enroll in post-secondary education after high school, CTE is definitely creating a path to college and career success. And get this, they have a graduation rate over 10% higher than non-CTE students. Did you know 89% of parents think students should receive more education about career choices while in high school? That's where CTE comes in. Think about it. Is it better to experiment with career choices when you're paying money to do so in college? Or should it happen in high school so students know a lot earlier whether a career option is the right fit? The answer is fairly obvious, don't you think? Now let's talk about why CTE is good for business and industry. It's pretty simple. Companies want skilled employees, and they're having a hard time finding them, which can cost a company money in lost productivity. Enter CTE. 6 of the 10 hardest to fill positions are in technical fields or require a CTE background. In fact, about half of all CTE learners are enrolled in programs in leading fields such as healthcare, STEM, and information technology, matching employer needs with student passions. CTE programs directly connect learners in high school and post-secondary with employers through internships, apprenticeships, and other meaningful on-the-job experiences. When it comes to CTE, more than twice as many CTE parents report being satisfied with internship opportunities. That means a lot of doors are being opened for kids. So here's the bottom line. Parents want their kids to find a career they can be passionate about. Kids want the same thing. And when you think about the real world, what could be better than having learners enter a field they know is right for them with a ton of hands-on experience? It's all possible thanks to CTE. CTE, learning that works for America. To learn more, visit careertech.org.
I'm on mute. There we go. The phrase of the year. So again, when we talked about labor market information, and when we're really thinking about connecting our students to employers and to the world of work, here in San Diego County, these are what we call our priority sectors, our high wage, high growth industry sectors. So advanced manufacturing, which in high school tends to be engineering courses where students are really learning CAD and some of the things that you need to engage in that. Education and human development, energy, construction and utilities, life science and biotech, healthcare, information communication technologies and digital media, and public administration. So these are from the San Diego Workforce Partnership, which is our local workforce investment board. They've done all of the work to identify a lot of these. And you'll find on their website things like posters and handouts that help to ensure students are familiar with these. And here also, I see Dean mentions in the chat that CTE helps with exploration of careers for students who are still unsure of what they want to do. And too many students have no idea their senior year. I think it also helps on the other side. So I'll tell you a quick story about my, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this. So in third grade, I knew what I was going to be. I was going to be a pediatric cardiologist. My sister had a heart problem. We spent a lot of time in the hospital. I knew a pediatric cardiologist. This is what I'm going to do. Fast forward, I'm pre-med. I'm 2 years into college, taking really intense science classes all the way through. And I got a chance to intern at the Children's Hospital at Stanford University, Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, because that's where my sister had been treated. And so we had connections there. I was at probably the best place in the world to do that work. And I was like, this is cool. And then so not like amazing. And then they let me go into the operating room and see open heart surgery on a 6-year-old. And I passed out on the floor. Turns out that the goal I set for myself in third grade was not necessarily the right life goal for me. And yet I had diligently pursued it for so many years without the experiences I need to determine whether it was right. So how do we give our students those experiences earlier so they can find out they love it, they hate it, they never even knew it existed, and it's awesome. I used to take my students to pharmacy day when I taught medical chemistry at UCSD, and like kids never even thought about being a pharmacist, and not just the kind at CVS, which is a fantastic job, but the people who actually create drugs and work with doctors to figure out what the right prescription would be. And so, you know, it's just about encouraging our students to have access and to get to know their options better. We know that this is some of that labor market information. This is from Building San Diego's Talent Pipeline, which is a really awesome website. And so what they did is they took some of our data, like if we look at our total population versus our innovation economy, we have huge equity gaps in the industries that we have here in San Diego. Equity is not an issue that just stops in school or even in socioeconomic sides, but when we get into the workforce, there are huge inequities. And I think we know that, but we don't always realize that programs like CTE help to dispel those, help to give a student who's never met an engineer an opportunity to engage in learning about engineering and building those skills. And so that's a really important piece of this puzzle. Now, if we're going to get down, let's get into like the actual definitions. So A pathway, a CTE pathway in high school is a multi-year sequence of courses. Integrates your core academic knowledge with technical and occupational knowledge to provide students with a pathway to post-secondary education and careers. That's the formal definition. These are the different industry sectors. There's 15 industry sectors that we use in California. And here's the crazy thing. Every single bullet point under each sector is a separate pathway. All right. So that's why we won't necessarily just see a manufacturing pathway. We'll see a manufacturing pathway in welding and materials joining. So we actually get pretty narrow when it comes down to what the sequence of courses we offer connects to. This is also, sometimes people don't realize there are separate standards for every single pathway here. So there's like a whole set of standards for building and construction trades, and then it breaks it down into the standards for each one of these 4 pathways that you see. So I think we have somewhere around 56 potential pathways that could be implemented at any school in the state. Then it gets more confusing, because when you roll it up to the state, you're going to pick one of these and use this word, structural repair and refinishing. But at your school, you can label it whatever you want. So a lot of times when you as a counselor are looking to say like, well, but this is a, I don't know, protect your money management course. Well, really it's in financial services if you were reporting to the state. So sometimes we just kind of get a little lost in translation because we're kind of labeling things that make them attractive to students at our site. But when we roll up that data to the state, we have to get into the specifics of each one of these sectors.
And it seems like everyone gets confused with that, because I'm constantly trying to say, no, that student's not a pathway completer because they didn't take it in the same pathway. Those are different pathways, even though they're under the same industry sector. And it gets really confusing when you're getting into the nitty gritty of reporting to CalPads and you're trying to work with your school sites to increase the number of completers.
Exactly. No, that's a really good point. And that's the other reason why like closing classes or opening classes or things like that are a problem, because right now with the College and Career Indicator, we want students to have a concentrator and a capstone, both in the same pathway. And they have to complete them both in their high school experience. So if they're like, oh, I want to change my mind, first of all, we're not forcing them to take 2 of the same pathway. Like we get it, students change their mind, right? Like I said, like that's part of the point. But when we enter a pathway, we want them to think that they're going to 2 years, and then it becomes a change their mind to get out of it, because we want our students to have those high quality. Their second year, they have more opportunities for internship and industry and hands-on experiences. And so we want them to have that more rigorous level of the second year pathway experience. This is also why when we're building pathways, we can't like change classes all the time. And so sometimes it's like that becomes difficult. And I'll say one other thing that kind of is sometimes difficult. If you have seniors who want to get into the first year of a pathway and it's really impacted, well, every senior you put into the first year of a pathway is a guaranteed not completer. All right. So you want to prioritize your sophomores and juniors into those first year pathway courses so that they have time to complete. And then if there's leftover space, then seniors can get in. But what will happen is that then eventually there won't be a bunch of seniors asking for those courses because they'll have had the opportunity to take it already because they weren't pushed out by other seniors. So I know that's a pretty common scenario that we see where seniors are filling up the intro and the concentrator classes, and then there's not room for the other students. And that leaves a very small capstone. And we all know what happens with small classes. And we don't want to see those go away. So this is a link to that pathways poster I showed, and also a link to the model curriculum standards, which is under review by the state right now because the CTE reviews all of their web pages annually. And so CTE is in that loop right now. So you can't click on it unless it's changed like in the last 12 hours, because I click it a lot. But that's just so you know, they do have standards they have to cover in CTE. This is going to be 2 to 4 year pathway course. The sequence has to cover all the standards. So when you write up your course outlines, You're going to cover all of the standards, and the students have to have a minimum of 300 hours in those courses, including a concentrator and a capstone. So if you're just doing a 2-year course sequence, you're just going to skip the intro and jump straight into concentrator. Also to note here, because of COVID and like hours are really hard to like count, what they've said is it's 2 full year courses and they're not going to like go down and count your hours at the moment. So if that's a concern, don't stress about that. We're looking at 2 full year courses though. One thing not everyone knows is that CTE teachers have a different credential than core academic teachers. CTE credentials are you actually come from industry. You have 3 years of industry experience, and then you can just get the job. And then while you're teaching, you do online classes. There are other ways to transition from a core academic credential into a CTE credential to add that on top. There's a couple of places where you can take a test, but in general, CTE teachers have, to be a CTE teacher, even to transition your credential from core academic, you had to have a background in that industry. So they waive some of the hours if you've been teaching for a long time or have an advanced degree, but they really, the point is that our high school students have access to someone with industry expertise. And so that is the pathway piece there. All right, so we're gonna jump into some models, because you're like, what is a CPA? What do you mean by linked learning? Project lead the way? What? There's all of these terms that we throw around in CTE. So I'm going to jump in with a few of these. So CPAs. These are a smaller learning community and they have a career theme. It is very integrated with core academic courses. Now, the thing about a CPA or California Partnership Academy is that there is legislation that tells you exactly how many students of what background and socioeconomic status and things like that have to be included. They have smaller groups, they're very cohorted, and then your school gets somewhere around $70,000 a year to fund that work, which usually goes into like having things like they go to conferences, and also they'll have a release period for one of those teachers to run the CPA. But that's one of the reasons why you'll see smaller class sizes in CPA, and that they have to be locked into those sequences. Emily, does Poway have any CPAs? No. And recently there was a middle school grant that went out that was about exploring whether or not you wanted to build like a CPA connection to the middle schools. So a few people might be exploring that along the way, but this is probably one of the most rigid kinds of pathway models because it's legislated. And so that's why if you're at a school that has CPAs, they're like, no, you can't swap kids out. We can't get our money if you do that. So that's one of the pieces. Now, linked learning is a little bit like that integrated model, but it's not legislated. It's kind of like a school chooses to do this. They're going to invest money in like training the teachers and giving collaborative time from your core academic to your CTE teachers. There's a lot of linked learning pathways, like Oceanside High opened some linked learning pathways. We look at Kearney and Claremont High and San Diego Unified. There was a linked learning, I think, welding pathway out in Grossmont at one of the high schools there. And this model is really, it's all about like thematic. So you'll have 2 core academic teachers and a CTE teacher, and they will cohort the students. So they might have other classes with whoever, but they have all of those 3 teachers. A lot of times it's founded on project-based learning, and they do like really integrated projects that are huge. I know I worked with Oceanside High, and like their health pathway did the zombie apocalypse, and they worked with the local law enforcement agents to basically build like an emergency. Their whole campus turned into like an emergency area, and they had like fake tests as whether you were going to become a zombie or not. So other students would come through and get zombie tested, and then some had to go through like a decontamination thing, and then like the art class was over there doing like what do you call that when like art therapy with the patients. And then, so like every class had something to do with this big project and how it went out. So you see these real epic projects a lot of times in linked learning. And then Project Lead the Way. Emily, do you all have some Project Lead the Way? I wonder if you might say a few things about this model.
Yeah, so we have Project Lead the Way. We start actually with our elementary schools with the launch program. So we start kind of all the way down at the bottom of the age group. And then we have Gateway at our middle schools. So we have middle school students kind of doing it. And then that feeds into our high schools. In our high schools, we have Project Lead the Way for biomedical. We have human body systems. We have several engineering programs. And what we like about it is it's all honors curriculum. So our district only recognizes the capstone course in each area as honors, but as a whole, nationally, they're all honors curriculum level. So, clearly our hope is that we can get all of them recognized as honors, because then, when we have students who are very AP focused, they're now realizing, oh, wait, these are equivalent when you're talking about the grade points. And that actually increases students wanting to enroll in those classes. But also just the partnership with four-year universities, having that connection. And our teachers love it because the curriculum's done, they go through the training, and they have their final exam. So for them, it makes it a lot easier to really focus on the project part of it than just kind of developing the curriculum.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about Project Lead the Way is everything is provided for you. So you have to go to a training in the summer. They run you through all the curriculum. You come back and your school has committed to purchasing everything you need to teach it, to be part of it. On the other hand, it can be expensive undertaking, and you want to find a teacher who's in it for the long run, because otherwise you have to pay for a whole new training for another teacher in the future years. So it is a robust program. It has a ton of supports. I know in distance learning, the Project Lead the Way teachers have talked so much about their online communities and how that has been really useful for them to find ways to address their students' needs at a distance. But it is not a cheap undertaking. You can fund it with a lot of the grant funding that's out there for CTE, but it's definitely a fiscal decision and a big commitment. And then when you're in it, it's very thorough and it's all there.
It's a great program if you can come up with the grant funding to pay for it. It's amazing.
Exactly.
And it's amazing to watch how our high schoolers support our elementary school students doing it. So we really try to do a lot of that vertical articulation and really giving the high schoolers ownership over what they're learning and allowing them to come support students in younger grades. So.
Absolutely. Well, that's a really great transition to this concept about really thinking about those younger grades and their role in pathways. I have this whole spiel that I do a lot on Ikigai, and Ikigai is a Japanese term meaning reason for being. And we want our students to find their purpose, their vision, their reason for being. And so really giving students a chance early on to do things like discover what they love, what their strengths, their interests, their values are, what kinds of problems they want to solve one day, those kinds of things, connect it to what the world needs. So they start early on. Like you can give them labor market information without giving them like a 30-page report, right? Just even some of the student-friendly images, bring in industry partners to speak to kids all the way through grade levels. I know Cajon Valley's World of Work initiative has really brought this into that elementary space. And there was a video that went out, it was from the UK, and it was a kindergarten class, and they asked the kindergartners to draw a pilot, a soldier, and a doctor, and most of them drew white men. And then they brought in women, who are a soldier, a doctor, and a pilot, and they were in uniform. And one of the kids even said, like, ooh, are they in costumes? Because we are programmed at such a young age already to say, like, this is what I've seen, so that's what it is. And so we've got to give our students opportunities to see themselves in those careers, see people who look like themselves. And so ensuring our younger grades have like a diverse group of people to learn from, of mentors, of guest speakers and things like that, both helps them to see what the opportunities are, see themselves in those opportunities, and to better understand their future. So these are a big piece. The other piece is in middle school, you can start CTE in 7th grade. There are some new, the Perkins 5, which is a lot of the federal funds, can now be used down to 5th grade, depending on your system and how you're deploying it. So what we see in middle schools are things like a elective wheel, where you connect it to all of the different programs at the high school, and the students might have like 6 weeks that explores ICT, and then 6 weeks that explores healthcare, and then 6 weeks that explores engineering, and so they have these opportunities to try out all the programs. You can also put those introductory programs into the middle school. So and I think there's this term experiential advantage, and I think it's the idea that our experiences give us advantage. And so many of our high socioeconomic students have, like, what do they do in the summer? I'm going to STEM camp. I'm going to robot camp. Oh, for Christmas, I got all of these amazing presents that give me the opportunity to explore. Or even look at, like, when I was a kid and I got to do that internship because I knew someone at a hospital, right? So that social opportunities because of who I am. And so these are all equity issues. So as educators, if we can give all students those opportunities, we can help address some of the equity gaps we see in industry. All right, this is as we get in and we think back to some of those integrated programs, I'm the integrated curriculum coordinator, so I'm really all about how do we integrate, but sometimes it's really hard. So if we look, I kind of have this model that I made up, cozy, contextualize, I'm going to add career context to my class, overlapping, I'm going to overlap with others. These are things that we can do in all of our classes, in all of our schools, without really transforming and having to do a crazy master schedule and all of these. So when you have teachers who want to do more career pieces, sometimes the counselor is a huge part of that, who can come into the classroom. And I know, Emily, you said you saying you were in the classroom even today or this week.
Yep.
And so I wonder too, like, as counselors, what kinds of things can you do to step into any classroom and help with career readiness?
I mean, I get asked to do a lot of career presentations or CTE presentations in the classroom. So I meet with our AVID students before scheduling meetings every year. We also use a program called Zello in our district. There's a lot of career assessment tools out there, but we're starting to have students do that as early as their freshman year, just completing these matchmakers. So as counselors meet with them, we already know what they're good at, what they like doing, and we can kind of have those conversations about overlap and how different classes complement each other, or will enhance, or let them kind of try out different things that maybe are of interest to them. So I do a lot of those presentations with students. And then, of course, the articulation, talking about early college credit and how that plays into their 4-year plan as well.
Great. Yeah. So I think it's really helpful to have that counselor eye. And I think the other side is, like you just mentioned, Zello. Many districts have some kind of career exploration tool. The teachers may not really know how to use that for their students. The counselors oftentimes are kind of the point people for the use of some of those tools. So find out what your district has and how you can use it, and maybe work with some of your teachers, whether they're CTE or others, on how they can use that to kind of give students a better picture.
And we're really trying in our district too to push it into the classrooms, because the teachers are really the ones that know the students even better than the counselors. In a district like ours, where there's a 600-to-1 ratio, it's the teachers that have more time with the students. So we're trying to help teachers build it into their curriculum, these assessment tools, to help, and really at the end of the day, it will help them engage students better, right? The more you know them and know what motivates them, the easier it is to lead them in class. So
absolutely. Well, and you have students take these like Thrively tests or whatever it is, and then what do you do with that information? Right? We shouldn't be having students do tests without doing something with it. So from the counseling side, that might help you identify which pathways they might be most interested in. From a classroom side, it might help you design your project-based learning in a way that's more meaningful for students. So take advantage of those tools if you have access to them. And there are free ones out there like California Career Zone that you can use to do that even without an adoption.
And a little bit off topic too, since you're talking about like kind of across disciplines, that's something else we always give students an example of. And something really cool we did in our district is we had our 3D computer animation students department pair up with our drama department. And I think it was 2 years ago now, put on the coolest production of Wizard of Oz I've ever seen in my life, because the 3D computer animation students did the tornado, they did the background, they did the Wizard of Oz. And what was really neat from a district perspective, kind of stepping back, is watching these students who, yes, have similar interests, but different areas of those interests, and seeing them work together to create this cool project that could be shared with the whole community. So, I mean, there's opportunities for that in all different CTE disciplines. And really that mimics the real world. So it was a great learning experience. So anytime you can find opportunities to do that, that's the way to go.
Yeah, it not only mimics the real world, but it builds essential skills.
Exactly.
So we know that our students, no matter where they go in industry, they need skills like communication, collaboration, resourcefulness, emotional intelligence. So SCWP, the Workforce Partnership, they actually looked through all of the listings for jobs, and they pulled these as the skills that are most found in job listings. And of course, like they might have like bundled them and relabeled them, because it's unlikely in a job listing that you see emotional intelligence is required. But what they did is they categorized all of the skills into these 6 areas. And so San Diego County Office of Ed, we worked with the Workforce Partnership to develop a bunch of tools to help with implementation of these skills. So there's a whole educator guide, there are rubrics for each one, and it's a really great way for students to self-evaluate and set goals around like what do they want to grow in order to be better prepared for industry. As we look at the bigger picture, another area is work-based learning. This is an example of the high school career development curriculum continuum. There's a middle school one as well, and they're both linked in the notes of this presentation. But really thinking about how we can connect students to the world of work. Work-based learning is anywhere industry is part of the student experience. So we have things like guest speakers and job shadows and company tours. But as we get into the more rigorous things like students running their own businesses or going to internships, those are actually going to be potentially part of the College and Career Indicator. So we're looking at ways to actually record those right now. So that might be one of the things that we ask of our counselors to help with, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But work-based learning is a huge part of the CTE experience as students not just become aware of themselves and their career, but really get into preparation and training for those careers. Recruitment and marketing is a huge piece of this puzzle, and I have an entire presentation. I just did a webinar on this recently, but when you do that, what you want to do is have a really clear message. So there's a lot of great examples in our region. So you can see here's Poway's CTE site, and Emily's here. One of my favorite things, Emily, about this is how you have each site and then all the icons so that you can see the opportunities that students have at each one. And so I know we have about 15 minutes left, but if you go to any of these sites, you can click through and kind of see how they've organized some of theirs. Here's some of the course descriptions from San Diego Unified last year. And this is nice because you see the pathway, you have the intro, the concentrator, and the capstone course, and then additional enrichment classes that go along with it. You want to be really clear about what the course is. In Poway, oops. Oh, there we go. In Poway, they have even more info. And so if you go in to one of the schools, let me make this a little bit smaller so you can see. What you'll see is they have that concentrator, all the courses here, and then what level, intro, concentrator, capstone, if you can see that. And then over here, it tells you if it's A through G, and gets you into some of the other things. So these are some of the ways to really make sure that there's a place that communicates all this information to your stakeholders. A lot of this kind of sticks in our head. And when I talk about recruitment and marketing, it's always like, make sure that you actually can have somewhere that like people can find it. So if you Google a pathway at your site, like what would you find? Would you find like, hey, Eastlake Medical Pathway, that's where I used to teach. What would I find if I Googled that? But do it using incognito mode, because then all the cookies that are stored on your computer don't direct it to the things that you've already visited. And so that's one trick along the way.
And we've even, as you switch slides, we've even been updating ours because we found that it wasn't as clear as it needed to be for counselors to really understand it. So I linked one of them in the presentation later. We might not have time to show it, but it's there. But I even did a separate one pager. It's like 3 pages because there's so many pathways within them. But for counselors, so it's a quick glance. They can see what industry sector, what pathway, and then what's the A through G fulfillment for that course, and then does it get college credit? If so, where? And that's all it shows for them. But I think it's much clearer than having to look, okay, what's this symbol mean? What's this?
Yeah.
So we're in the process of updating that. Hopefully it'll happen pretty soon. But it's, but we did a slide deck for each pathway by school now, because it just that way we can link it to more things for students.
Perfect. Yeah, because we want our stakeholders, it's like when you're marketing and recruitment, which I have a slide on, but I'll say it now, you want to get the message clear. You want to pull in your school stakeholders and your middle school stakeholders, and then you push the information out to your parents and students. So if any of your stakeholders at any of those levels are confused by your handouts, it's like, all right, how do we revise this to make it really clear? The CCI is huge. We talked about it this morning at one of the sessions, and so that'll be recorded and available if you didn't make it to that. But the College and Career Indicator is one of the main metrics is CTE completion. And so you can go into the California School dashboard and you can take a look at yours to see what colors you are. This is kind of one of the ways that we communicate. This came from the state, and it gives you like, okay, CTE pathway completion with a C- or better in the capstone course, plus one of these additional criteria. But that gets a little confusing. Here's another one from the state also, which gives you all of these. So you can go to CTE, and it's CTE plus the SBAC or the college credit, but also you'll find CTE is next to A through G. And so it's kind of like with the CCI, I think about it like if you go to Panera and there's like the you pick 2 menu, and this is what we're saying to students. All right, students, here's a bunch of things that you should do. And even though there's some exceptions and certain things that are bundled in certain ways, you're going to need 2 of these, whether it's both SBACs or both AP tests or an AP test and A through G or A through G and CTE. You're going to pick 2 at a minimum to get yourself to the prepared level. Now, we've also created a flowchart version of this, and all of these are in the slide deck, so you can jump in and use them. But this comes from our organization, where we've kind of put this into more of a flowchart level, which might make it a little bit easier to digest. So we definitely want our students to be considered prepared as much as possible. One thing with CTE is our funding is crazy. We have, basically one of the things that people say is it's like we're funded by gift cards, because like every year it's like, ooh, wait, okay, I got my Perkins and I got my CTIG and I've got my K-12 SWP, and I can spend this one on that and this on that, but none of them are good next year. So we better get them all spent, and then we're going to get a whole new round for next year. It's madness. And for every funding source, we have a whole list of things we need to report on. And so in a whole like calendar of reporting. So what you'll see is a lot of CTE leadership is immersed in grant writing, grant reporting, and they can't do all the other things. So you can dig deep into this. Perkins isn't changed. Oh, this is an old, it was not signed yesterday. Still says that from whenever I gave this presentation a while back. The Perkins reauth was signed over a year ago at this point. So the California state plan has been approved, but all that stuff is kind of like, now we have COVID. So we'll see. I haven't dug deeply into what, I wouldn't say that we're looking at significant changes in California. We'll just delete this from the version everybody else can see. So Perkins 5 does have like one change is that you could use the funds down to 5th grade. Not very many, not really any more funds. It's just you can spread them thinner across more years. We'll follow up on that. ACTE does a lot of, which is the National CTE organization, work to kind of like determine what changes are coming down, but I wouldn't say that we're seeing a lot of changes in Perkins. So apologies, I fixed the other version already. All right, we don't have very much time left. I think you all know what a program of study is. So this is kind of an example of a program of study where you pull CTE in and you make sure that a student can hit both A through G and CTE. And you can even pull this out and go like, all right, student, circle the ones you want. And now they have a schedule. So this is nice. And then on the back side, you include things like what they can do in their post-secondary programs. And this really helps. So when you're communicating with parents, that they say like, oh, here's the courses I'm going to take. Here's where it leads me. See, it's not just a 2-year or just a career. It's also a 4-year. So sometimes it's just embedded in how we communicate with our pathway. And then also including things like labor market information is really helpful. So like this could be like a 1-page, 2 sides kind of a handout if you wanted to do something like this. And you can also give that to the students who are just finishing their first year of the pathway to say like, okay, here's course 2. Are you good with these classes? What do you want? All right, schedule done. So this kind of is just some other resources around that, but I definitely want to get to the final slide. This is actually, even though they don't use it anymore at Torrey Pines because they've rebranded everything, this is one of my favorite flyers for marketing and recruitment because it has information about all of the pathways at the same school. And then this is one from not San Diego. Is it San Diego? Like
yeah, Sage Creek, so Carlsbad.
Sage Creek, Carlsbad, thank you. Yeah. That is a nice infographic on their pathway. So as you're thinking about marketing and recruitment, if you click right here, you can go to my webinar that I did last month, and that's all recorded. And there's an action plan for marketing and recruitment, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. Dun, dun, dun. Understand the sequencing. Oh, if there's a singleton, if you can lock them in the master schedule, then that really helps because then they don't get shifted out of that class. Try to avoid those conflicts between singletons. I know you all have so much control over that, but these are some of the ways to help students. We already talked about prioritizing intro. Emily, do you want to talk a little bit about dual enrollment and articulation?
Sure. So our district only has articulation, so that's what I'm the most familiar with. But I mean, with all 3 of them, right, it's early college credit, and it's really introducing students to opportunities. And I think for some students, it's like, yes, I want this because it's going to give me an advantage in the college application process. And for other students, I think the real benefit is letting them see that they can take a college class. College is attainable. And I mean, I know I've had some students that I've sat there helping them fill out their application to Palomar, which is where we're in the boundaries of Palomar College. And, you know, this is a student who didn't ever see himself going to college. And I think that happens more often than some of us realize. And that's really, to me, it's helping that student realize, hey, there is a next step and I can do it. I've already completed a college course. So, I mean, really what it is, it's all early college credit. It really just depends on how you do it, whether it's taken at the college campus, whether it's taken at the high school campus, who teaches it. For articulation, it's simply an agreement that we have with the community college saying that what our teacher is teaching is equivalent to what is being taught at the community college. Normally there's a final exam so students will have to get a B or better in the course and a B or better on that final in order to be eligible for the articulated credit. The great thing about any of those options is that transcript is there for students, whether they're going straight to college or the student's going to go and join the military for a while and go to college later. Those credits are still there for them to transfer wherever they decide to attend.
Perfect.
That's kind of the quick
Thank
overview.
you. That's yeah, I know. I was like, I'm talking too much. I'll throw one your way. So thanks, Emily.
I appreciate it.
And if you're interested in knowing more about some of these are just some resources that might be helpful. The community college does have a website that hits all of the colleges in our region. And so I would definitely encourage you to explore that and know it so that you can share that with your students. I think one of the things I realized when I started getting into this work was how many of our local community colleges really specialize. And we don't think about saying like, oh, if you want to go into health, you should go to the Grossmont College, or there's this campus for off the 905 for Southwestern that has like really specific programs. Or if you want to get into like 3D design, Palomar has great programs. So helping your students navigate just like for a 4-year, which 2-year programs they want is excellent. So we just have one specific slide that just pulls out, we've already talked about most of these, counselors as an invaluable partner in this. So Emily, do you want to talk a little bit to this list right here?
Sure. I mean, I feel, as a CTE counselor, it's like any counseling role, you're a jack of many trades. And you really, I always feel like there's so many things that I'm working on. But we talked about the middle and high school career development continuums. I know I linked them here. I know we don't have to, you can click on it if you want, but you don't have to just for time. But really, the whole idea of my position is to implement these within our district. And that really covers everything I do, right? From marketing to work-based learning. The marketing is something I didn't realize would be such a big part of my job. I love it. I don't love the graphic design part of it because I like it. It's just, that's the challenge for me, is keeping the website up to date, getting these documents done. I find myself constantly fighting with PowerPoint or Word or whatever it is I'm trying to create a document in, wishing I had Canva. Helping release
Canva is free.
Yeah, the free version, I use it, yes.
Oh, yeah.
But not I want the full gamut. But just really helping people better understand pathways. It's amazing to me how confusing it is. And it was confusing, it still is sometimes for me too, is understanding how they all fit together. I linked our newest, it's not complete yet, but I linked our newest pathway completion document that we're working on. The example I put was Rancho Bernardo High School. It's slides. So this is intended to be student and parent facing, which is different than some of our other documents. And it gets into the nitty gritty of the pathway, just showing what does it mean to be a completer? What happens if you get a completer? It links it to Zello. It links it to Netbrus, which is a virtual career speakers that we use. It references their site-based CTE counselor. And then my goal for this last slide, it's still really general, but I want to link videos and things that the students have done. If they've competed in FIRST Robotics, let's get a video up of our students competing or prepping their robot for competition. HIP, we have a great video on our partnership with Northrop Grumman, things like that. So students can not only see the big picture of that industry, but what they can do now to get experiences. And I always tell students, if you take a class and you hate it, that's still a success, because you learned that's something I don't want to do. And then we can sit down and talk about, but what about it did you like? And how can we maybe match you with something else that you might like more? So
like how you also are like tying into the getting to know their teacher as part of this. Yes. So
yes, yes. The goal is we want the teachers to own this. This is their pathway. They know their students. I love that Miss Barnett put up, that she enjoys running and hiking. She's actually an aspiring ultra marathoner. I wish she had put that on there. But just getting to know the teachers, I think this can be used for marketing to middle schools as well. Because I think if they know their teacher, we're working on doing videos of each of our teachers explaining their pathways as well. So that when we show it to students, they can get to know that teacher. And yeah, just like the other thing I didn't realize was the grants, how much of grant writing and understanding how all of that works would be a part of my position. And then the district college and career fairs, career speakers, any kind of career anything. And I really support, we have a career education specialist in my office as well. And I do a lot to support their work as well. So they support teachers, I support counselors, and we're this great team that kind of works together with the student in mind. So that's kind of a brief overview.
And I think everyone probably knows a lot of these pieces are part of their puzzle. I know we're over by time a little bit, and just so you know, all of our contact info is here for follow-up. But since we're the end of the conference, like if we can I can stick around at least if you have, I know there's a couple of questions in the chat. But I also wanted to let you know, like, if you gotta go, you gotta go. This is virtual land, log off. But we'll stick around for a minute for Q&A.
Right, let's all give a virtual round of applause to our presenters. Thank you. I think there's a reaction for it right there.
Yay.
So yeah, thank you. If there are any questions.
I'm missing the conference happy hours that happen after the presentations. Can we talk about that if there aren't questions? Just kidding.
We have a couple in the chat. I think, let's see. There's a linked learning dual enrollment presentation. Uh-oh. I should have double checked all of my, well, I will have to, if you email me, I can try to track that down. Sorry about that, Allison. And then were there other questions that we missed? I think that's most of it. All right, yeah, I missed that happy hour. It's like at the end, because that's like the chit chat time where it's almost like a informal professional learning community, and you can talk about the common challenges and excitement, and feel really specifically able to kind of debrief life.
Right. Exactly.
Cindy is asking how school starts a CTE program. And so if you're looking to do that, one of the things that we can sit and actually meet with you, our CTE team at the County Office of Ed. So shoot me an email if you are looking to start one from scratch, or whoever your county office is, if you're not in San Diego County Office of Ed or San Diego County. Cindy, are you
I'm here.
Diego?
Yes, I'm San Diego, but we're a charter school, so we're not under San Diego Unified. So we are just trying to figure out how to do this.
Yes.
For a couple years now, and I don't know where to start. And I emailed you just a couple weeks ago, and I wasn't able to go to the meeting yesterday because I was here. But I've been really trying to work with my principal. We already have a CTE teacher.
Oh, that's
yeah, but
phenomenal.
we just don't know, like, can we just, like, do we just say the class is CTE? Like, we just don't know how to start.
Yeah. So yeah, let's set up a meeting, but really you need to write your course outlines that are aligned to those model curriculum standards. And you have to pick one of those spots. Like if you go, like basically your first step is going to say like which bubble and which dot on that bubble, like which exact pathway are you building your sequenced courses in? And then you'll want to build your course outlined for your concentrate or capstone. You need at least those two. And then you just build your courses like you would otherwise. But then when you're reporting it, you're putting those into the right categories.
Okay, so we don't have, I guess I can set up a meeting with you.
Yeah,
because the CTE actually has like a flyer for each industry sector, not a flyer, but a booklet, if you will, online. You can look them up, but I'm sure Jewel has, like, she knows where they are right away, but it actually outlines what those learning outcomes need to be, what you need to touch on in that course. And that's kind of probably where you would start.
Okay.
Yeah, well, CTE Online already has model course outlines that were funded, that were developed by funds from the CTE. So CTE Online is another great place to start.
Okay. Does anybody have to approve this, or as long as we are hitting all of these, we can have the CTE pathway?
Yeah, as long as you're like, you just have to put it all into your systems. Yeah, the course outlines don't get sent anywhere to be approved. It's just because like part of it will be like what funding you're using. And so like those have different rules for different funding. But you should be able, like, if you don't already have SWP, then that's definitely something that we'll want to get you set to apply for round 4.
And I would also say too, is think about, like, depending on what pathway you're starting, you know, think about industry partners too, because you want to have advisors that work in the business, right, in the industry, advising what you're doing and kind of mentoring your teacher to make sure that that class is being taught to industry standards, current industry standards.
Okay.
So that's something to think about too, as you're, you know, first get the curriculum, then think about the advisors. I mean, not all at once, but
Yeah, it's just a lot to like, because to build on your own, I was just like, I don't know where to start. Like, we have the classes, it's going to be in computer science in some way.
Yep.
But yeah, it's overwhelming to start it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk offline and get you
Okay.
set up with some resources to set up that pathway.
Okay, awesome. I'll send you an email to set up a meeting, probably with our CTE teacher and our principal,
Perfect.
just so we're all on the same page. Thank you so much for the information.
Yeah.
It was great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And
bye.
I see Chandra asked about certifications for completers. Our district started this last year. I can share with you, I don't have it personally, but my colleague does. We created certificates to give out to completers, and we did it last year. Obviously, it was a little wonky because everything was virtual. So we did it through senior awards, but our goal is to actually give awards to 9th through 12th graders who are pathway completers. We also got permission through our board to make a notation on their transcript and put a seal that looks like the seal of biliteracy, but it's a CTE seal in the color of whatever the pathway is they completed, and we put that logo on it. I wish I had a picture to show you. And we put that on their diplomas. So we recognize it across the board. We really want this to be, I mean, this is now a state standard, right? Becoming a pathway completer is coming down from the state saying this is college and career readiness, right? Or prepared. And so we want that to be up there with the seal of biliteracy, the valedictorian, salutatorian, those seals that they get on their diplomas. And we want this to be something students want, because the hard thing with completion is, what's the student buy-in, right? Like, how do you motivate them to take that second class or that third class to get the capstone course? So, but I'd be happy, Chandra, if you email me, I can send you what we're doing for our district.
Yeah, and when I was in the classroom, so I ran the medical pathway at Eastlake High, we had 2 all pathway meetings a year. At the beginning of the year, it's like a kickoff, here's what it looks like, and we'd have like cool opportunities for work-based learning, but we'd bundle like it, so it was a whole day thing, but all the classes for that period would all come to the auditorium. So like you weren't coming out of other classes. It's just like, instead of going to my classroom, you would come to the auditorium and be bundled with other students in the pathway. But the second round, what we do is we bring up all of our completer seniors. We'd have each one talk about their favorite work-based learning experience and how it impacted them. We gave them a certificate. We gave them, what do you call those ropes that they wear at graduation? Cords. Thank you. I was like, it's not called a rope. But I know the first year I was literally at Michael's and like hot gluing tassels on the end of ropes because we only had a few completers, and it was like, we're giving them we're giving them something. So and then eventually we actually ordered really nice like sash things that had like our logo and stuff on it. So really it can start small. Like with you and some hot glue your kitchen table, but
that sounds like something that's kind of how our certificates felt this past year. We also do a white coat ceremony for our health science pathway completers. So they all get a white coat with their name on it. Their teacher started it, and they do fundraising. So it has their first name. She's very adamant that it has their first name because, if the women go off and get married and change their last name, she wants them to still have their name on it. But yeah, so they all get white coats. It's in the evening at the district office, and we show a slideshow. We normally get a guest speaker who works in the health science field that talks about college and career and the health science pathway. So that's something really special. And it's normally not that many students. Only one of our schools does it, but it's normally like maybe 13 students. So
which is like kind of like the nursing pinning ceremonies.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of making a big deal out of it because if they've taken all 3 courses and they're completing and they've gotten that work-based learning experience, like they should be honored, and it is a big deal. So
all right. Thanks everyone for sticking around 10 extra minutes who are out here.
We totally ran long, but it was good.
All right. Well, if anyone has any extra questions, remember our contact information is here on the first and last slides. Thanks so much for joining us, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.